live from Capitol Hill right now with this looming vote. Congresswoman, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. It's great to have you. Reports say that you are a lean no on this over concerns about potential Medicaid cuts. Is that accurate? And what would need to happen to make you a yes?
Well, I would say right now I've moved a little bit toward yes. I'm still between undecided and lean no. The reasons why are because I still need to get a better understanding and some assurances that we're not going to have impacts on Medicaid recipients in my district and the hospitals that I represent that are already struggling, safety net hospitals, and any cuts that could affect them. The reality is, if you want to achieve what they've put forward, they've only given us $4.5 trillion for tax cuts, and that has to include an extension of all the existing provisions that are in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, right? So your child health care, a child tax credit, your standard deduction that was doubled, the lower personal income, as well as the corporate tax rate, the bonus deduction, R&D, all of that is going into that $4.5 trillion. So it doesn't leave a lot of room to add the president's additional tax priorities, which happen to also be priorities of mine, restoring the SALT deduction to an extent, lowering taxes for seniors, no tax on tips. So what happens then? We'd have to find additional savings. They're already proposing about $1.5 trillion in savings, and they want to do another half a trillion to increase those tax cuts anymore. So that begs the question, where will those savings and cuts come from? And I have a big problem if it's going to be in the Medicaid space. We've already said no Social Security cuts, no Medicare cuts, but with the Medicaid, you know, if we focus on true waste, fraud, and abuse and mismanagement of the program, that's one thing. If we want to ensure that only U.S. citizens receive Medicaid, that's another thing. I can support those. Making sure able-bodied Americans, 18 to 64, without dependents, are working to receive their benefits, I can also support that. But those are the questions I have at this moment, and they have not been addressed. And so until they're addressed, I'm a lean no.
Okay, well, our understanding, at least, Congresswoman, is that leadership has a limited amount of time to address those concerns. If they do want this on the floor tomorrow night, what odds do you put on this getting delayed as they try to work to address your concerns and that of other colleagues who might have them?
Well, those of us who have the concerns on where this $880 billion within the energy and commerce space, which includes Medicaid, just have a simple question. Where is that $880 billion going to come from? Are we going to be repealing additional IRA energy tax credits? Are we going to be ending electric vehicle mandates? Are we going to be, like, where is it coming from? That's our question, and we need an answer to that before the vote. I know that the president has made very clear he also does not want to see cuts to beneficiaries on Medicaid. That's great. I'm glad to hear that from the president of the United States. I've heard it also from the speaker. I had a good conversation with him last night, and he also has a very large Medicaid population in his district, so he also shares these concerns. So the question begs, then how are we going to get to that $880 billion by not touching it? I'm glad that everyone agrees that we don't want to affect the beneficiaries. I have people who are senior citizens, who are developmentally disabled or have other disabilities in my district, and they rely on this Medicaid health care, and I don't want to see them be impacted by it. So we just need to see that. Look, I come from New York, and we also know that New York State mismanages a lot, let's be honest. And there's a lot there that is abused by the state of New York, certain loopholes that they're taking advantage of to take more Medicaid money. And the expansion of Medicaid after COVID actually led to the federal government picking up 90% of the share and the state only kicking in 10%. Maybe the state needs to kick in a little more, and that would help us reduce the debt that we have here on the federal level. Those are all conversations I'm open to having. I just want to make sure that my beneficiaries are not impacted in the process.
Well, and of course, that is your job to ask those questions, Congresswoman, and you're not the only member asking them. This idea of a vote tomorrow seems to be like a bit of a reach. What's the real timeline as you consider the days ahead? Maybe by the end of this week? When do you think Speaker Johnson and Tom Emmer will know that they have the numbers to move forward?
Well, we'll be a group of us that are particularly concerned about the Medicaid issue. We're going to be meeting with the Speaker in a little while this afternoon, and so hopefully we can get some additional clarity and assurances, and we'll see. We'll see what happens in that conversation and what kind of assurances that we receive. But yeah, I mean, look, if they don't have the votes, it would make more sense to either amend the resolution or to wait until we have more conversations with the White House and our colleagues. Now, the other thing is, people need to recognize this is a budget resolution that the Senate already passed a different version that includes no money for tax cuts. So we have two different versions here. So eventually we're going to have to get to one version that passes both houses. So really, in a way, we're taking this vote, and even if it passes, it most likely is not the final version, because I don't see the Senate taking that up, which means we'd have to come together and hash out something that's in the middle, hopefully one that will address all the president's priorities of the savings, rooting out the fraud, waste, and abuse, as well as the money for the tax cuts to implement the additional tax provisions for the middle class. And then we have to go forward as a team on both sides in the House and the Senate and pass that before we can actually unlock the legislative process of getting into the details and which provisions will be included in the overall reconciliation package. So there's still a long way to go in this process. I know that this vote is important tomorrow, but you know, if it does not pass, there's still an opportunity for the House and the Senate to get together based on these two frameworks and pass that one package that's going to be done regardless of whether we pass this tomorrow or not.
Well, and of course, the timeline you're working with here does have the ability, at least the flexibility, to be extended, as it's really the tax cuts that are expiring at the end of the year. And that seems to be the deadline. I'd like to ask you, though, Congresswoman, about a deadline that is much closer. Mid-March, we're just 18 days away from government funding running out, and it's still unclear to us here at Bloomberg, and I wonder if you can provide some clarity as to whether or not forward progress is being made on talks with Democrats to avert a shutdown. Are we going to see the lights turn off, or will there be a continuing resolution, or actually appropriations bills getting across the floor?
Well, I'm hoping we will once again avert a government shutdown. This is, I mean, I've only been here for 2 terms, and I've already been through this about 5 times. But thankfully, each and every time we did avert the shutdown. But this does require cooperation and bipartisanship, and I'll explain why. Unlike the budget resolution, where you can do this with just a simple majority, which the Republicans have, the funding mechanism has to be done with 60 votes in the Senate, which means you need 7 Democrats to come along in the Senate. You can't achieve that if you're just going to have a Republican-only piece of legislation that moves forward. So regardless of having the trifecta, we need to engage the Democrats in this process. Now, once you negotiate with the Democrats, what happens? You lose, you know, a few dozen in the House, because the Freedom Caucus guys don't believe we should negotiate. They don't even want to negotiate with us and the other Republicans in the conference. Forget about the Democrats on the other side of the aisle. So this does present a little bit more of a complication this year. So we do need you know, the moderates in particular on the Democrat side to recognize that we need to avert a shutdown. Hopefully they will come and join us to vote to avert a shutdown. And you know, that's the reason why I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, because I think it is important for Republicans and Democrats to get together and have these conversations. And this is an opportunity where they can actually help. They were not there for us when the far right did kick out our Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. They went along with the far right to do that. This is another opportunity for the Problem Solvers Caucus to show that they truly want to work together and avert a government shutdown, and I hope that's exactly what happens. But I'm going into this knowing, you know, in government, you're not going to get everything you want, just like in business, just like in relationships, just like in life. But unfortunately, there are some members that want all or nothing, and that's just not the way it is here.
Not the way the cookie crumbles. All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much. Joining us live from Capitol Hill, that's Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.